Welcome, everybody, to the Leaders Leading Leaders podcast. Hello, everyone. John here. Welcome to the Leaders Leading Leaders podcast. If you like what you're hearing, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps others get to where they're going, and I would much appreciate it. Today, I want to talk about building a culture of trust. And this is something that I work with organizations on whenever we're doing strategic planning. I always start with the culture piece, the values. A lot of times I walk in the door and you'll find pretty quickly an organization that values culture. They normally have signage. Employees or people, will be able to identify their culture pretty quick if you ask what their values are, what their beliefs are, what the core existence, why the company is doing what they're doing. However, the opposite occurs when you walk into an organization and you walk into a room, more specifically, and people are sitting around the table. I walk in normally as the consultant and I get a good vibe when I walk in the door. I'm normally early, and as people are shuffling in to the meeting, I can quickly tell how culture is, or what the organization's culture is, pretty quick. Their body posture, if they know why they're in the meeting in the first place, that goes to a lot of what I look for when I am examining a company's culture. But really quickly, let's get into the definition of an organizational, or the word organizational culture. And is the beliefs, values, and attitudes of the team, and that will influence, those three things influence the behavior. So back to my intro story, you can see why when people walk in, they haven't been briefed on the meeting. They probably don't know what's going on. They see someone from the outside. It's probably an audit. Or what is this individual doing there? Or a lot of times I get, well, you're going to fix us type question. I don't know if there's any other consultants out there, but a lot of times when you get that question, it's going to be a long day. So one of the things that culture brings is trust. And that's really what we're going to talk about today, is how to build that trust within your culture. I'm not going to get into the high level of establishing culture. We're just going to assume that you have a decent culture or a good culture going in your organization or on your team. And today we're going to talk about tips and tricks on how to build trust. So let's first start with the communication piece. And a lot of times you'll walk into an organization, whether you're doing a SWOT analysis or you're just asking the leaders in the organization what their specific weaknesses or opportunities are, and communication gets brought up probably 8 out of 10 times. For the most part, it's both internal and external communication that they find is a challenge. Communication, and it doesn't surprise me. Communication is one of those things that it's a lot about perception. So I can ask 50 people and 30 of them say, yeah, we have really good communication. The other 20 are going to be on that opposite side. They don't communicate enough. The message that they communicate is unclear. There's no feedback loop. I feel like I'm unheard. A lot of that. And if you're laughing to yourself or you're nodding your head right now, you've probably worked in an organization like that, or you are in an organization that you could say those very same things. So what can a leader do? What can the frontline leaders do to create a culture of trust? Here is a couple things that I like to suggest. I do personally, and I feel like it opens the door. It's that open door policy. And I'm going to talk to that from a in-person situation and then a virtual situation. A lot of, after COVID, a lot of teams, if you weren't already virtual in an organization, a lot of organizations went virtual and some did not go back, or some have a hybrid model. So I want to talk to both. I think that's very important. So let's start with the in-person first environment. So you're able to go into an office, you're able to meet with your team in person. I think that adds a lot of value to organizations. And even if you're doing a real estate business or a multi-level marketing business, the in-person piece, a lot of times you can do Facebook or any of the other social media platforms to communicate, texting, voice text, all of that. But nothing beats that in-person communication. And why is that? Why does the just one-on-one conversation create trust? Well, in my opinion, it creates trust because of the relationship that you are creating. You're able to sit across from somebody and share stories which bond people together. It's creating those little nuances, finding out, oh yeah, I got an uncle named, Jerry, and he's a great guy. Oh yeah, your brother was in the Navy. My brother was in the Navy, my brother-in-law's in the Navy. And then, that spurs other conversations. Kids, if you have a family, if you have visited a certain place in your life, whether on vacation or you've lived in a certain place in your life, all of those things just through conversation can occur and create that connection. When that connection is strong, that's when the trust begins to build. One of my non-negotiables that I have for me personally are to connect to 3 people a day. That could be and new connections. So it could be somebody, as I'm checking out the line at the grocery store. It could be somebody that I walk into an elevator in the office and they're going up and I, say hello and ask them how they're doing today. That is a connection to me. Frontline leaders must get good at making connections. They have to. It's a fundamental piece of communication. And in order to communicate well, you have to practice at it. It just does not come normal to people to go out, especially as an introvert. I don't find it comfortable to go in and communicate well to people. So that's why it's a non-negotiable. I have to practice at it. I have to be consistent at it. But that in-person meeting creates that connection and in turn can build the trust. Trust doesn't happen overnight. And I think that's the other key point here. And that's both in-person and virtual. It has to be consistent. That individual has to know that you're going to show up, that the meetings that you schedule, you're not only going to be early, but it's going to, be value to them. You're adding value to the conversation and adding value to whatever you're trying to accomplish within the team, within the organization. So the meetings in person, FaceTime, we're going to go back to the virtual side of the house. So vice versa, FaceTime. There's a lot of folks that our voice texting nowadays. I'm not a big voice texter. If I need to voice text or I need to verbally say something to you, I'm normally going to pick up the phone and give you a call or ping you online and ask if you got 5 to 10 minutes or, be specific as a frontline leader. Hey, do you have 5 minutes? And then make sure again to abide by that 5-minute rule or ask, I see this conversation taking longer than 5 minutes. If it evolves, do you have time? Or can we schedule another meeting? So it's that asking for permission. It's not going over. It's respecting others' boundaries. It's respecting their time. A lot of times, I get people who will say yes just because of your position. It's that positional authority type thing when they got a lot of things going on and they can't deal with, whatever conversation that you want to deal with right now. So again, asking for permission. Do you have an additional 5 minutes or can we schedule a 30-minute meeting when you're available later on in the day or tomorrow, something like that. So again, making sure that we have good boundaries. The other piece to creating trust is being intentional about how you set up your meetings. So for the most part, I meet with everybody on my team and everyone I interact with at least once weekly. At least once a week, I meet with them for 30 minutes. The way I divide up that meeting, 10 minutes, I'm getting handsy here. 10 minutes is their time. 10 minutes is my time to communicate anything. And then we do 10 minutes looking forward. So that way it's nice, succinct. Now, we may not take all of the 30 minutes. Some weeks are lighter weeks. Some weeks are busier weeks. And I'm making sure, again, that if I go over that 30 minutes, I'm asking them permission. Do you have another meeting? I see us taking this maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. And again, if you don't have time, I got it. Do you have time though? Asking that question is asking for permission. So that's my weekly meeting that I have a one-on-one. I have sub-team meetings also, and then I have my larger team meetings. Then I have, of course, my peer meetings throughout the week. So I have 4 really, weekly meetings, and then I have some bi-weekly meetings scheduled. But for the most part, in those one-on-ones, their time can be them telling me about their vacation or the house repair that they're continuing to do. And if anyone's watched The Money Pit, we all know how those house repairs sometimes, they never go as expected, and they always cost more money, and they're always over time, especially if you're using a contractor or even if you're doing it yourself. That's their time. They can talk about anything they want, if it's business or it's personal. My time, same thing. I may talk about the Sooners and what a great win if I know that they're a football fan. Or I may talk about, my running that I do, or, training, or my grandchild. I love talking about her. She's the most beautiful thing in the world. Who doesn't love talking about their kids, right? Especially their grandkids. So those are the things that, and then looking forward, what is coming? What's on the horizon? Do you need anything from anybody? That's always the last question that I ask. Do you need anything from anybody? And then that way we close the loop. Those little nuggets, those little 30-minute conversations that we have, I tell you, I've learned more in those conversations than any, and there's, other than the time chunks, there's no agenda. Their meeting, it is their meeting. I put it on my calendar, so I'm intentional about it, and they know that time is dedicated to it. And I do not move those meetings. Those meetings are priority one for me. And that communicates two things. Even if I'm not communicating them to directly in that meeting, just having it on my calendar and letting them know that I'm not going to move this meeting, I will move around that meeting. What does that tell you as an employee? Think if you were on the other side of that conversation. I always try to put myself in other people's shoes. If you were on the other side of that conversation, how would that make you feel? That would make me feel pretty important. If my boss took the time to meet with me once a week and didn't, rarely move that meeting, and I'm not saying, I shouldn't say never. If I'm out of the office, I cancel those meetings. I give them back that time. However, when I'm in the office, that's my priority. And they know that that's my priority. So that's my opportunity, again, to gauge how they're feeling, their nonverbals. I ask them to keep their camera on. If it's a virtual one, if it's an in-person one, they walk into my office. They can close the door. They can leave the door open. However they feel comfortable doing that. Sometimes we close the door and we have a good conversation. So that's the piece to building trust. Trust doesn't happen overnight. It happens over time. People have to know that you're going to show up. People have to understand that you have their best interest at heart. And in the end, trust will occur. Go build a great organization. Go be great. I hope this helps somebody. We'll talk to everyone later. Bye-bye. If you enjoy what you're hearing, please hit the like and subscribe button. It helps us get others to where they're going.